The whole world in one spot. The Expo 2020 Dubai beats many previous records, and in the first part of my report I already showed you some of the highlights of the Expo, such as the Terra Pavilion, the Women's Pavilion and the emotional German Pavilion. Now it doesn't get any less exciting because a whole bunch of great, rather embarrassing and quite inspiring pavilions are waiting for us in the mobility and opportunity sections. Come with me and let's visit the Expo 2020 Dubai. And today we're entering the Expo through this gate, the Mobility Gate, and that's quite handy if you arrive by a car. The Expo has a couple of gates, and the main gate is perfect if you arrive by metro, and this is one of the gates when you arrive by car. So, by the way, the parking, when you arrive here by car, the parking lot is really far away from the gates. But then there's actually a shuttle that brings everybody to the gate. But you need to know that. Otherwise you walk forever. Way in the back behind me you see the entrance gates, and there you have to show, of course, your ticket, and then your vaccination status has to be like fully vaccinated, or a green status on the Al Hosn app, and that also you can also get that if you get tested every 3 days, then that counts also as a green status. And of course there's also a security gate, so to make sure you have no bombs. So like at the airport. Here we're entering the mobility part of Expo 2020, and that's starting with the Pavilion of South Korea. And these cubes here, you see there's so many cubes, they change all the time, and they show the colors of South Korea, and I'm sure there's also something behind it. Anyway, I will find out, I hope. Then next to there is the Pavilion of Poland and the one of Belgium. The Thai Pavilion is very successful. It actually doesn't have an exhibition except for 3 movies inside and 1 dance show outside, but they give a good impression of the country. Have a look around on my channel later. I made a whole series of reports about Thailand in 2021, including the largest beach guide of Phuket, where almost all my relatives have been living for the past 40 years. The Thai Pavilion is one of the very emotional pavilions and therefore one of the best at the Expo. The very special atmosphere of the country comes across really well with a mixture of seriousness and playfulness that is typical for the country.
Hello.
They showcase the technological progress of Thailand in the center of Asia, and the pavilion also impresses with stories not just from Thais, but from enthusiastic expats who started great careers in Thailand. After a visit, you really want to book a flight to Thailand right away. Well, after Thailand, we're just gonna have a look now at the Pavilion of Malaysia, the neighboring country of Thailand. And they also have performances going on, but it's not so smartly done because they're in an amphitheater that is not so easily to see from the street. While Thailand was so smart, they put it on an open stage, visible for everybody, and everybody could see it from the street. And there was such a good show and so much joy in Sanuk, that's Thai for joy, going on stage that you just want to visit Thailand right away. But then I have to be a little fast because I'm gonna have a quite nice meeting tonight still with Lays Laraya, also known as Skywardsfreak. That's quite a known Instagrammer or YouTuber when it comes to airlines, and she's Emirates' most loyal customer, I would say. That's what she says, and that's really true. She's fascinated about Emirates, and I'm looking forward to her very, very much, meeting her, chatting with her.
Good evening, friends. One thing I didn't tell you is that my friend Chris, he's actually an opera singer, and look, I even have a CD of him tonight. Are you ready, Chris?
I'm so ready.
So let's sing it. Oh my god, that's when I'm gonna get embarrassed.
as the moon lost her memory. All alone with the memory.
This is Carpool Karaoke.
My co-star.
Getting professional on Carpool Karaoke tonight.
Wonderful, Lays.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching.
Now we're gonna have a look at the Pavilion of Malaysia, so come with me and visit that too. Sometimes it's really interesting how countries present themselves. I know Malaysia quite well, but after seeing this I wouldn't be so interested in going there, because it was just another generic showcase of technology and what they're able to do on the technology sector, which is true in certain areas, but I couldn't care less of going there if I didn't know that Malaysia is actually a fantastic country to visit and to travel to. It really is. But they really failed showing that. Maybe they didn't want that. I have no idea. Venezuela, rich in oil and yet so poor, is missing the chance to present itself to the world here. There's almost nothing to see in its beautiful pavilion. But the next pavilions of our visit are all the more exciting. Australia, Russia, the mobility-themed Pavilion ALIF, and before that now, South Korea.
Please take the escalator to the right. You will go to the top of the Pavilion Pavilion. Please take a selfie to create your avatar so that we can start the tour as soon as possible.
The South Korean pavilion is a bit, or actually very hectic, but it's still worth standing in line here. They have a technological concept with everybody's own avatar, but it does not seem fully developed because the apps are very slow. Nevertheless, South Korea is of course clearly far ahead of many countries in terms of technology, and there's also a lot more to discover in this building. It doesn't get boring here for sure. Here you can scan a code and then see virtual drones flying over the expo through your temporary smartphone, which should offer a glimpse into the mobility of the future. It's kind of cute, but somehow it's also a bit like Pokemon. At least I didn't find it incredibly exciting. But otherwise there's quite a lot to see here, such as a lie-down cinema. So, the South Korean pavilion is really quite special. There's quite a lot to see, quite a lot to look at, quite a lot to think about. What is mobility, what is the future going to be like, and so on. There's a lot of nice visual effects, but not too much technologically, but quite nice visually. And and also it's quite useful to have a Smart Queue pass for this pavilion, because you get Smart Queue passes for many pavilions, but mostly you get just in easily. Here not, because there's always quite a queue. And I understand it. So get a Smart Queue pass for this pavilion over here. I just would like to have now something from the South Korean pavilion. Please give me an innovation for people who left their sunglasses at home, especially in a place like Dubai. Before we go to one of the most impressive buildings at the Expo, namely the ALIF Pavilion, let's take a short visit to the imposing French Pavilion, because unfortunately that's done pretty fast. Most that you see of France here is about food, or actually their own cafe, which is kind of cute and sympathetic, but it's also really not very much. If you like my flight and travel reports, please give me a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it right now with the bell notification. It costs you just one click. I'm really happy, and you're making a big difference for the future of this channel. But now we're going to one of the most beautiful pavilions at the Expo, the Mobility Pavilion ALIF. The largest elevator of the world is lifting us up in total dark to the top floor, and then everything is about mobility in all its forms, starting with great adventures of Arab history, because there was so much more than just Columbus finding America. So this was the Mobility Pavilion ALIF, and it's such a spectacular building from outside, and the expectations were really met. What is coming inside, really very impressive, as you can see. And now we're going on with the country pavilions, and I just had to take off my mask for a moment, because actually at the moment in this street almost nobody's walking here, so I think that's quite responsible, and I'm just sweating like hell. And on top of all, I left my sunglasses at home at the hotel. I mean, how stupid is that? I brought 6 pairs of sunglasses just to look cool once in a while for you, but now I look the opposite, completely run down from sweating and walking. Australia shows mirror effects of all kinds and inspires with an exciting planetarium with observations of the starry sky and nature from the perspective of the Aborigines, with stories of their thousands of years old culture that has survived at least partially to this day. However, it's not mentioned that many of the original inhabitants of Australia still have to lead an existence on the sidelines today. Pavilion of Turkmenistan, with the horses in the front, because they're famous for their horses and for the real artistry as riders. And look at the side, so beautiful. Anyway, next of it is Russia's pavilion, very different from the Turkmenistan one. But what I want to say is what the builders of the Expo really thought about is practical things, because you have this nice walking clusters here, but also it gets kind of tiring when you walk the whole day. So for that they have this beautiful rubber floor, so you can walk here for hours, like on a jogging trail, like on a forest ground, without big problems. You won't get hurt too much. If you're planning to visit the Expo with kids, there's a lot to do for small kids too, because there's a lot of playgrounds, and this one here is for like more like kids between the age of 6 and 12. But then there's also playgrounds for the smaller ones and or the younger ones. And I mean, look at this, you can go in the belly of a whale, so that's really quite something. Before we reach Russia, let's stop by Finland for a moment, because the pavilion just looks too beautiful not to enter. And according to studies, the Finns are among the happiest people. The inside is unfortunately not as great as the outside, even if you see salads growing here without soil and sunlight, and there's a hint of those magical northern lights. It's just annoying to see the name of an elevator company occupying an entire pavilion. So let's go straight to Russia. The architects of the Russian pavilion did not lack creativity. You're literally sucked in by this colorful structure. Inside it's all about our brain, about intellectual and emotional thinking, and also about social skills between people and collaboration with a common goal. It's a little brainy, so to speak. The hall with the giant brain is packed with spectacular visual effects on all sides. It's just a shame that you don't learn much about Russia itself. And when you're feeling hungry, there's a lot of choices here. You can have street food like here. We can just get some shawarma or a burger or a slice of pizza. And then there's also small kiosks called Zoom, where you can just get something to drink at a regular shop price, not overpriced. And also like a USB cable, for example, like me, because I forgot mine at home. And then you can also have food at some of the pavilions, like local food of their respective country. For example, over there you see the Pavilion of Peru. They have a Peruvian kitchen over there, cuisine. And I just had Thai food yesterday at the Thai pavilion, and that was very nice too. It was Thai spicy as I ordered, and very original. And you have also very expensive food. You can have very experimental, innovative food, but then the price is beyond the $200 for the dinner.
On my way to deliver a delicious meal.
I'm so done with walking right now. I walked over 30 hours already here at the Expo, but then there's these wonderful shuttles that you can use sometime. That's wonderful. Well, now I reached the holy grail for myself here at the Expo, and that's the Pavilion of Emirates. And I'm really looking forward to seeing this. And you know, I'm gonna fly on Emirates first class in a few days only. I will fly from Cairo. I go first to Cairo, and then I go back from Cairo to Dubai and on to Toronto. And altogether it's gonna be a 32 hours experience of Emirates first class, including 14 hours at the lounge. So it's gonna be a couple of reports, I think, including a really nice lounge report. I promise. I really stay up and use those 14 hours to really present everything to you in detail. Anyway, now let's go and have a look what they show us here at the Expo. The largest Gulf carrier is basically like a lifeline for the whole region, so a pavilion is only natural, and especially exciting for AvGeeks like me. What is really impressive about the building is the interior design though. Inside it's all about the future of aviation with quizzes and facts. You learn about technological improvements and fuel alternatives. A lot looks innovative, and there's also an attraction, a 3D flight in the aircraft of the future with VR glasses. However, some of the interactive stations are just too slow. The vision here is that the aircraft of the future will fly without pilots and flight attendants. a robot will bring food at the push of a button, a message that is really not exactly positive. I went in twice, once alone and once I met AvGeek YouTube legend Sam Chui for it, which was a pretty nice personal encounter too. Look, it's just such a beautiful, beautiful building. It's very Emirates somehow. You see the tree up there with the Emirates logo and so on. And the only thing I really hope that it will not happen that we won't have flight crew anymore in the future, because I think that's so important to communicate with other people on board. It's so important that we don't have just robots around us, but just normal people. I think that won't happen. I think people always want to interact with other people. What remains is the memory of interior architecture that is really worth seeing, a souvenir shop, and the knowledge that today a flight with Emirates and with flight crew is usually a really great experience in all classes. Despite the smart queue, I only have a few pictures of the host's pavilion of the United Arab Emirates, because even if you have a smart queue ticket, you need to wait inside the compound for another 10 to 20 minutes. So altogether you have to plan about 45 minutes to 1 hour. That's important to know, I think, just for your time planning. If you want to see this pavilion, you need to plan extra time, even with the smart queue ticket. Shortly after this notice, a VIP group came in and I just couldn't wait any longer. But of course, this pavilion by Santiago Calatrava is about the impressive development of the UAE, from a poor dry strip of desert to a region of worldwide attraction. On the other hand, you are in Dubai already, and luckily you're having it all right in front of the door for the live experience. You can then discover all the other countries of the world at the Expo. And the Expo is also for people who love to travel, who have the travel bug. Look, there's Tonga, Namibia, Kenya, and so many other countries. Micronesia, Tonga, I just said, the Solomon Islands, and many, many more. I was also here in Gabon's pavilion or a house. And you know, there's just so much to see. I mean, there's the big pavilions, and then there's all those other countries that you would love to see, but you're never gonna see maybe all of them. Anyway, you can spend easily a whole week here if you want to see it all. I try to make it in 3 days as well as possible for you guys. Look, there's the Pavilion of Luxemburg. The tiny country has this beautiful pavilion that looks like a concert hall or a philharmonie or opera house, more or less. Then there's also this very spectacular pavilion over here of the United Kingdom, and it looks really nice at night. Really spectacular, actually more spectacular at night than now. And here we have a special pavilion, and that's, I think, the only pavilion in the whole expo about a province, and that's the state of Baden-Württemberg of Germany. I cannot believe it, how they made it into here with a whole pavilion where other countries just share a house with 4 other countries. They have their own pavilion. I don't know how they made it. It's kind of really embarrassing. I feel embarrassed, just embarrassed for them. Anyway, that's a way of being self-secure about themselves. And here we are again at a couple of Middle Eastern countries. So this is the Pavilion of Iraq, the land of Mesopotamia between the 2 great rivers. And we move on to Bahrain, this cubus here, or cube, with 2 very interesting exit and entrances. You see here, you go down like into a catacomb and you exit down over here. Pretty impressive. And then behind that we have Pakistan, this very beautiful building over there that looks very different again at night. And now behind me you see the Pavilion of the United Nations, and that's called the Opportunity Pavilion Mission Possible. And it's a little sad because of course their mission and their message is very important, which is the equality between people, but I cannot believe how much boredom they could pack into such a big building. It's really very boring. It's so sad because it's such an important message, but a maximum of boredom guaranteed in here. Anyway, there's so much more to see at the expo, and almost everything is more interesting than this one, except for the building itself. And if you haven't seen it yet, be sure to have a look at the first part of my report, in which we visit the huge Terra Pavilion, as well as India, Israel, Italy, the USA, and also the German campus Germany. In my opinion, the best pavilion at the expo, because it's the most informative and most emotional.
Hello, how can I help you?
Here's the Pavilion of Colombia, and just next door we have the Pavilion of Belarus. That's the country with a nice president. And next to there is a very impressive pavilion, and that's the one of China. And you see, it looks very Chinese. It looks also very traditional and at the same time modern, and especially very Chinese in a certain way. And at night, it's really spectacular because they have a really nice slideshow at night that really shines over the whole expo, and that's also a message in a way. Well, I already had a smart pass for the Chinese pavilion twice, and both times I didn't make it because it took too long in another place. So now I see that you actually don't need a smart pass, because nobody is queuing up here for the Chinese pavilion. I mean, such a big one, and for such a big country, nobody's queuing up. Anyway, we are going in now. Strangely, in the Chinese pavilion you actually feel as being in real China. Everything looks very chic on the outside, but inside a lot looks a bit temporary, rough and ready. At the end, there was a movie show with the cool effect of movie screens hanging one behind the other, but the movie had an incomprehensible flat story without a real message. Well, now I understand why there's no queues at the Chinese pavilion, because although it looks amazing and fantastic at night with this gigantic light show they have that's shining all over the expo area, inside there's not much to see. It's kind of boring. And then they have a cinema experience that is also like, I mean, I didn't get the message. It was a bit about generations, I guess, and travel into space. But it's done like a really not very good Hollywood movie, and with some bad contact in the sound system, so that we had always a bad sound in the sound system. I don't know how that happens. Nobody's realizing it. It was just not nice to listen to. And such a big country with so many creative people, I don't know how they can make such a not really good movie. Anyway. Then next door is this, with the white little, I don't know, that should be mountains, I guess, because that's Austria. And somehow I find it, I mean, I was born just next to Austria at the border, and it's so strange because this pavilion has nothing to do with Austria, and it's really, I would say, the most embarrassing pavilion, because inside it has nothing, but really nothing to do with Austria. The name of the title for the pavilion is Austria Makes Sense. Well, it did not make sense to me at all. Anyone expecting impressions of Austria with its incredibly rich history and culture will be bitterly disappointed. Right next to Austria, just as on the globe, is one of the most impressive pavilions at the expo from the outside, Switzerland. So they really rolled out the red carpet, and what a carpet! Inside there's a really cool effect in many ways. You walk through a chilly hall full of fog, just as you sometimes do in the Swiss mountains. After all the mountain magic, there's a bit too much advertising going on for Swiss elevator and escalator company, and the visit ends with a relatively strange final exhibition. The main focus of the Egyptian pavilion is economically on the Suez Canal, but you can also see a lot of LED walls with hieroglyphics. A few days later I was in Cairo myself, and I think they could have bragged a lot more about the unique history than showing a rather strange 90s pop style video with a dancing fire figure. But tastes are different in the world, and that's exciting too. I already showed it in the first part of my report. In the evening, the expo reinvents itself and puts on some magic with concerts and illuminations, and the gates don't close until late at night. The evening atmosphere in some corners here is really beautiful. But now let's ask other people too how they like the expo, and there's only one person that didn't run away when I came. So, how did you like the expo? The little friend remained speechless, just as I did regularly at this very remarkable expo, and I hope you will feel the same way if you come here. So I tried to show you most of the really interesting places over here, but there's so much more still to discover. So come here, take quite some time and really explore the world, how it's showcased here. Well, I will go to the desert tomorrow just to relax a little and to clear my mind a little bit from all those impressions that I got, and then it goes on to quite a stunning trip over 9 time zones, a couple of really stunning airlines, and I'm so happy that I can do it. And of course I will report from that too. So please stay tuned, there's always stories to tell. See you again very soon here at Travel, Sing, Fly.
Hörst du nicht die Bäume rauschen draußen durch die stille Rund?
Well, you don't see many trees here, just a couple of bushes, but the silence, that's what you hear.